In this chapter, we'll go over how to make the model head from scratch. Here we have the skull and the biped in place, and all we need to do first step is to make a sphere. And I think sphere is the closest form to the head, and to save time, instead of modeling a box to a sphere, I just use this as a start. And here I get the sphere to go from the back of the skull to the tip of the nose, and the side will be the ear section. So I just deleted the verts and using FFD to sculpt it quickly. And again, this stage you don't want to get too detailed, and just getting the rough form in it, and then we'll bring it into ZBrush. And here I'm just using a shift, hold down shift, and then move the edges to extrude it. I'm also using a shortcut key 4 and 6. 4 is to select the edge loop, and 6 is to set flow. And as part of the edge tool in PolyBoost, you can assign the hotkey with. And I have the little keyboard mapping down there, and this shows you what kind of keys I'm using. As you can see, I use a lot of hotkeys for to speed up the workflow. So in the beginning, you just kind of learn all the tools and what kind of poly tools that you like, and everybody has a different workflow. So depends on your workflow, you can just assign hotkeys as along the way as you go. You don't have to decide it in the beginning, but you can just add as you go along, and it will help you to work faster. So I usually, at a certain stage, I will delete half of the face and throw a symmetry modifier on top, just to save myself time to model both sides. And here I'm using the PolyTool bridge to connect two edges together. And I'll leave the middle for the ears. You can select the open edge later on, and then just cap it. And here I'm setting flow again and doing symmetry modifier. Selecting the open edge, capping it, make planar, will make the face flat. And you can just rotate the plane according to your reference. Now we get a very basic form. And the next step is exporting that to ZBrush. And making sure there's no penetration. It's probably better if it's a little bit larger, and you can project and snap on the mesh. Here we get two meshes, and then we imported that, and we use project all. So then the base mesh we made is projected onto the skull, and you can just use a standard tool to take it back out a little bit. And this mesh we're gonna use for retopologizing in a Max 2010, the graphite modeling tool. And the graphite modeling tool is basically from PolyBoost, and they integrate it into Max 2010. So here I'm trying to snap it what I have and try to save it, but I decided it's better to just start from beginning for retopologizing it. So here I'm using Max 9, the PolyBoost tool. As you can see, I'm using the border tool, but I decided to go to 2010. It's a little bit faster and more, it's a lot, I think they rebuilt it. It feels better in this program, the newer one. So this next section is to use this graphite modeling tool, which is PolyBoost. And here I'm building a new I'm building a new OBJ, and I choose on surface and choose the ZBrush mesh that we have, and I put offsets to 0.01. And I'm just going in using the topology tool right now, drawing all the lines in and filling it up. And also I use the extend tool a lot to build the meshes. And in the next couple minutes, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, you'll see me going through the process of retopologizing using different tools in graphite modeling tools. And I'm just basically choosing the area based on the facial muscle and the edge flow. And it might take a little bit editing at the end to get it to be perfect, but at this stage you just kind of connect it as you go, and you can rework it later on. So I'm just getting the basic big shape, like the jaw, the nose bridge, the eyes, the eyebrow, the mouth area, and just connecting it as I go. And it's good to have a facial reference on the side so you know how the muscle flows and how the edges should follow what direction. And once you get used to it, this process is pretty much the same, like dragging the edges and connecting it. And here I'm using a Swift loop, and which will divide the edge. You can slide along the edges, and I'll use it again later so you can see how it works. So there's two different panels. There's graphite modeling tool tabs and freeform tab, and PolyBoost actually got split into two different tabs. So sometimes I have to go back in graphite modeling mode to find the tools I needed, and then go to freeform for other tools. So it's a lot of selecting the ring, dividing it, and deleted the faces and redirecting the dragging it to a different direction based on the topology. And the more you work with it, and the more you will see, okay, I need to direct this flow in different ways, and try to keep the edge ring consistent around the eyes and the mouth area. You don't want it to flow everywhere. You just want to be like a complete circle loop. So here I'm doing the loop around the eyes. It should be all in one ring. Especially for the eyelid area, you want it to be consistent so you can do the eye blinks for the morphs. And for the nose, it's important to get from the tip of the nose to the brow area. You don't want any five-sided in the middle of it, because there will be a pinch and it won't look smooth, and you want that area to look sort of smooth. So here I'm just redirecting the flow, so I want it to have this loop around, and see this highlight here? It's actually a cartridge inside, so you want it to create that at the end. You should have topology that goes along with this shape here. Again, the mouth should be all circular move, no five-sided. I usually tuck the five-sided in areas that's really small, like right here in the nose and on the cheek area. These are all deforming area, and here it's all deforming, so you want to tuck this somewhere in the middle. In the neck area, you just try to get all the topology in there, and later on you can redirect this flow to get this muscle. And a lot of time the animator will request a intense neck movement. It will show all the muscles in there, so make sure you have enough topology to for all the major muscles underneath. So here I'm just filling in all the rest of the back of the neck. Is not very important, so you can just put in all quads and make it even looking. And again, this stage you can just kind of sketch it in. It's really rough, and you don't need to clean up every single vert and make everything really even. Because later on, we're gonna export this to SSI to use the relax tool in SSI to make it all nice and smooth and still retain the surface tangents. So right now you're just focusing on filling it in and watching out for the direction of the flow, but don't worry about anything else. This is the tool, the swift loop. You add the loop and you can slide it along the normal of the surface. The topology tool draws the topology and onto the surface. And here I'm having trouble with operations failing. So what I did is I snapshot the mesh and export it and import it again, and it seems to work fine. For a female, there's not a lot of forehead wrinkles, so you don't need to put a lot of topology in the forehead. But for a male or monsters or older person, you might want to cut in a little bit more extra topology for the wrinkle. And with ZBrush now, you can do a lot of the sculpting with very little topology. But for production, you need the topology to show in the viewport to let the animator knows and the rigger knows where is the facial landmark. So you want to have enough, but not too much and not too little for other people to see it. Because you can't really see that you don't want to have like 5 billion polys in the viewport and people can't work with it. And if you don't have enough topology, then people don't know where the facial muscle is and the cheekbones and all that. So, and also especially around the eye area, if you don't have enough topology to indicate the exact location of the eyes, so it won't be able to see in the animation like the blinking or how far it's going. So like especially for eyes and lips area, you definitely need enough topology to show the form and where every detail is at. And the good rules for having good topology is the ratio on the each face. It should be a square. That means four sides is evenly length. And the more rectangular it gets, the more it will be when the form will get really pinchy. And also when you UV, it's better to have like a very evenly made topology. So from a detail area to big area, you want to go tight it a little bit. Like for example here, that's really dense, and you want to work the topology so then it get less dense and it goes to the back of the head. You don't want it to be dense all around because it's not necessary. And you can always fill it in first and then clean up and optimize it later at the end. Because you don't want to spend like 15 minutes on one area and not be able to finish the rest. Just keep moving and try to finish everything and then optimize it later. Like here I'm optimizing it after I fill it in. And checking the edge ring. Make sure the eyes are all ringed and the back of the neck it doesn't really matter. So here I'm gonna go over the Max Relax tool and the SSI Relax tool. And the reason I don't use the Max Relax tool because it doesn't hold a form very well. I can demonstrate here and make sure, like right now I'm doing the symmetry modifier and I'm using F50 to put the middle line into the 0 axis. And then after that's done, we can do the Relax tool. And here you can see if you relax the mesh, it shrinks in and doesn't hold the form very well. So I exported OBJ into SSI and do the animate relax tool. And you can tell the difference. It is actually smoothing it out, but it's holding the form, it's not changing any shape, which is really handful. So I exported that back to Max and you can see the morphing of it. It didn't change anything, the shape, but the topology is being relaxed. Adding more loops for the lips. Again, at this stage, it's like modeling in clay. It's very rough. It's just putting the underlying structure down for the topology, and then we can refine the shape with later in ZBrush. So now we got the mesh in ZBrush. We can quickly sculpt what we see in the reference and what we know already into position. Just move as fast as you can, and then we can refine the detail in different stage. The last thing you want to do is get stuck in one area and just refine it, like the eyes, for example. You just don't want to stay there for too long and refine it. You just want to do a overall sculpt down for the head, and then refine it as you go along. The female skull has a lot higher cranium than the male, so it tends to help too when you have a model, a CAT scan for the skull. It's very helpful, or a anatomy reference. You can get it from online, like a replica of the female skull. So then at a certain point, when I feel like I need to add a little bit more topology for like detail areas like the eyes and the nose, and here I'm going back to Max and using the graphic modeling tool and adding more detailed topology, so I can actually go in and detail the mesh a little bit more in ZBrush. And then using the temporary eye setup, just kind of make a sphere and the eye is actually not a complete sphere. The front of it is a little bit taper. So I just trying to make a tam eye to put in ZBrush to sculpt with. Again, it doesn't have to be super precise, just kind of rough it in. I'm using the set flow tool here to even it out. In here, I'm trying to put a texture map in there, but I later on decided it's not necessary at this stage. So I'm just gonna go ahead and export that into ZBrush and sculpt around the eyeball. And when you sculpt along, you will be able to tell there's a certain area you don't have enough topology, because we're not dividing the mesh into subdivision, because I want the base mesh to have enough definition for animation, and so we're not using just displacement to displace a whole mesh into super different looking base mesh. So I want to get the base mesh as close as possible and then put the detail on top of it. Again, this stage is roughing it in, and the more you sculpt, the more you see shape, and the more you can get into detail. But right now, don't go into making creases and anything like that. Just doing the big form right now. Here I'm bringing it back to max and using the tool again. Again, I'm finally working on that the cartilage in the nose to redirect the flow and adding enough topology in to get that shape. I'm doing a little bit optimizing and redirecting the flow. Using relax tool, and it will save a lot of time to kind of smooth it out. If you model for a while, you find a lot of tools in computer tools that will do the job for you instead of doing a vert by vert. So just you have a tool set that you know when to use and to help yourself to save time. Here I'm using the set flow, select edge loop, and set flow and relaxing tool to even out all the topology. Cutting in some wrinkles for frowning. For a small area like the eyes, I use I stay in max, and because I can select verts and edges and very small area, and then cutting in the detail at the same time. So not until I get enough topology, I won't go back to ZBrush yet. But once I have enough, I feel comfortable with and sculpting all the detail, I will just bring it into ZBrush to continue refining the shape. In the next section, we're gonna go over the setup for ears. So I delete the area that I wanted to ears to be and use GeoPoly and PolyBoost to make it round. And just cutting in the rim of the ears and directing the flow in the middle. And you can leave the area blank if you're not sure what you're gonna do yet. And just kind of do like a edge modeling tool here, just by hand, positioning the edges and chamfer it and extruding it, dividing it, pulling it out, and all these little tools that you will experiment and you'll find your own workflow. And every modeler has their own tool set that they like and they feel comfortable with. And this is just the way I usually model, is by extruding and connecting edges and redirecting the flow as I go. It's kind of like sketching. You just kind of put down the construction line and then you refine the detail and wrinkles at the end. So at this stage, you sketching out the basic outline and form that you see, and then refining it later. I actually liked making topology because for me is very very challenging, and it's kind of like a puzzle game. You just kind of give yourself a little challenge here and there, and then you try to solve it, and when it works, and when you sculpt and you can feel the difference, you can feel, oh, this area, and I feel there's no pinching or anything, because when you smooth out in ZBrush, the 5-sided area gets like a little dimpled indentation, and it's very very hard to fix. And also for animation too, when you do facial animation, you don't want those 5-sided. It's very annoying to have it in the middle. So here I'm using that same relax tool in SSI to just get a little bit of relax onto the mesh. You can actually paint a weight map to select the area that you want to relax. And then now I'm using the proportional modeling tool, which is a little bit better than modeling in Max, because in Max you have to switch between vertice, face, and edge mode with a hotkey or a click of a button. But with this proportional modeling tool, you can actually select either the face or the vert or the edge simultaneously. You don't have to switch two different elements, which is a very fast way to model. So sometimes I like coming to SSI to do that part of it. And they also have a tool that you kind of brush along the surface without changing the shape, but you're changing the topology along the surface. And this is very helpful in working with topology. Because it doesn't really affect a lot if you're doing it still, but if you're doing animations and facial deformation, you want to make sure that the edge flows are matching up with the facial anatomy and muscle. So back to Max and morph it back to the SSI relax mesh. Here I'm cutting it more defined area for the nose and the lips. And this little area with extra topology really helps when you do your sculpt in the future in ZBrush. And now it comes the fun part of sculpting with the topology. Here I separated the bottom and the top lip so you can see in between the creases. So you notice I spin the model around a lot just to turn it upside down and left and right just to make sure that it looks good from a different angle. Masking out the bottom lips to fix the bottom lips as well. And the eyes looks like it's very simple, but there are a lot of interesting form within the eyes and how the angles are. Some areas are flatter than the other, and the folds, and there's a indentation in the skull, and the more you sculpt, the more you find those little things and put it in. And if you observe and realize there's something that you're missing, and I mean, after so many years of modeling, I still find new areas every day when I sculpt. Like, oh, this I didn't notice this before, even though you study in anatomy. But then every person has a very subtle difference, and if you discover those things and put in your model will look a lot different than just a generic head. And those are the things that makes it unique. And the ears are interesting too. It's very complex, and it's got a lot of folds and shape in there. And the size of the ears and how it angle gives the person a lot of different personality. Like I mentioned in the other chapter, like large ears will appear to be relaxed, and pointy long ears will be like very intense kind of look, and small ears will make it look very delicate, intricate, and young. So you can play around with the feature on the face like that for each section, and just kind of analyze it and ask questions to yourself, like how come this person looks a certain ways, and try to find out what makes it look certain ways, and try it on your model. Give it personality and uniqueness. Here, morphing back all the changes back into Max and see the difference. Here I'm adding more topology for the back of the ears. You get a feel of when to add topology when you sculpt, because it just doesn't have enough for certain areas. So here I'm combining the head and making a bust for the demo on the other section. And here I'm using the bridge tool to merge in the neck and the body, dividing edges as it needed. I'm selecting the open edge and capping it, and using FFDR modifier to change big shapes. Now I'm capping and using the open edge and then cap tool. Making the bottom quads by selecting the center face and turn it into edge and count how many edges on both sides and divide it into 2, and then do half of it horizontal, half of it vertical. And at this stage we have a mesh that go back to ZBrush, and then we can do more sculpting. Now I'm using medium speed for modeling. Like in the beginning stage, you can go pretty fast, like really rough and really fast. And here is you get enough topology to pull around, so you don't want to like destroy your base form. So you want to go a little bit slower. And when you go to the detail, you want to go even slower to refine. And so just kind of watch out your speed, and don't go too fast or don't go too slow. That there is a speed for every stage. So in here, I'm being a little bit more careful than the beginning stage. And have all the reference prepared and handy for different needs. And it's not good if you have to stop modeling and go look for reference. I usually just look for as much as reference I can in the beginning, and if I need it, I pause for half an hour just to make sure I get enough and get back into modeling. That way you can focus on, once you get into the flow of modeling, you don't want to stop, and you want to be continuing thinking. You don't want to break your thought during the process. And here I'm cleaning up the symmetry modifier. Sometimes when the middle of the when you do the symmetry modifier, if your verts are not aligned at 0, it will make this mess. So make sure you have it at 0, and also turn the well, I think it's cut along center to off, and turn it the tolerance to 0.01. Like yeah, slide along the mirror off, and 0.01 on the bottom. And at this stage, you're not really worrying about making the likeness or anything like that. Just getting the form right and the anatomy right, and the uniqueness and the personality, it comes later when you get the base form pretty close to what you wanted and accurate. And right now it's still a little bit rough, so I will continue modeling until I'm happy with the generic look, and then you can add personality to it at the end. It will be discussed at the beauty path section. As you can see at this point, I'm just moving the verts and the edges around. I haven't really started sculpting yet. Unfortunately, there's not enough time for the sculpting section in ZBrush. This will be just for the base mesh, but I'm sure that you can find plenty of tutorial on ZBrush sculpting. Now I'm importing to Max and dialing in the changes. And when you move the mesh like that, you can see a lot of problems, and it stands out a lot because it's in movement. So here I think the top of the skull is a little bit too tall. So I'm using FFD to refine it. And adding detail to the deer ducts. And here I use a lot of reference from different angles just to make sure that I get all the anatomy in there and not looking strange in certain angles. So just try to get as much as reference as you can, and just try to double check yourself to make sure that it looks right and not too cartoony or too off model. As you can see, the mouth before was a little bit too curved and too much cartoony look. So I'm trying to make it a little bit more realistic. And the more you worked on it, the closer you'll get to a tighter model. So just keep on working and until you're happy with it, and don't get discouraged if it doesn't look good. And as you can see in the beginning, it doesn't really look like a person. It's just a blob, and you just have to refine it over and over again, and just keep moving with it and make subtle changes, not too big changes. So just keep iteration and save a lot of files just to go back if you like certain versions, and study anatomy and practice a lot as much as you can. And that's pretty much the end of this section here. And I hope you learned a little bit for sculpting the bus, and enjoy your progress. Thank you for watching.